Clint Eastwood is the industry gold standard for efficiency. He expects perfection on the first take and silence on the set. But there was one man who broke every rule in the Eastwood playbook, a performer so notoriously difficult that Clint eventually labeled him the worst actor he ever had to manage. This wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a total breakdown of order that pushed a legendary director to his absolute limit. Today we go behind the scenes of an infamous on-set war to uncover why a Hollywood icon reached his breaking point, and what happened when a master of control finally lost his patience. The story behind this failed collaboration is even more mind-blowing than the film itself. The setup for disaster.
You see, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the...
Clint Eastwood runs a set unlike almost anyone else in the business. 2 takes maximum, usually 1. He shows up knowing every shot before the crew does. No wasted time, no unnecessary conversation, no ego. The people who've worked with him consistently say the same thing. You always know exactly where you stand, the days run fast when he's on set, and by the end of the shoot, you've made something you're proud of. That's the reputation he built over 50 years. So, when he chose this particular actor as his co-star, people in the industry genuinely did not understand the decision. This wasn't someone with a positive reputation. This was a man who had been fired from his last 2 productions. Stories were floating around, screaming matches with directors, rewrites that went nowhere, and entire shooting days lost because he simply refused to cooperate. Those kinds of stories follow a person from project to project, until eventually nobody wants to take the risk. But Clint wanted him specifically. He wanted that volatile, unpredictable energy on screen. He figured he'd seen difficulty before. He figured the project was strong enough to hold whatever came with this guy. And honestly, he probably thought nobody was going to act up on a Clint Eastwood set. That last part turned out to be the problem. The first production meeting was the first red flag. Clint outlined the schedule. He explained the tone of the movie and gave the actor a clear breakdown of his character. The actor walked in and spent 40 minutes talking about himself, his theories on performance, his ideas for changing scenes, his thoughts on how the character should really be written. Clint sat there and let him talk, didn't interrupt once. He probably thought the actor would tire himself out. Unfortunately for him, the actor was just getting warmed up. The project began under the shadow of this tension. Every department head knew the reputation of the lead actor. They walked on eggshells. They checked their equipment 3 times. They knew that if things went wrong, they would be the ones to face the actor's temper. The atmosphere was professional but fragile. Clint was the only one who seemed unbothered. He walked onto the lot with a coffee in his hand and a plan in his head. He was ready to work. He assumed everyone else was too. Little did they know that what they were dealing with would be worse than anyone expected. On the first day of shooting, the actor shows up 2 hours late. His excuse was a faulty car. 3 different crew members had spotted him at a diner down the street 90 minutes earlier. That wasn't even all. He walked onto the stage acting like he owned the place, and immediately launched into a complaint about the costume. The coat was wrong. The hat didn't work. He claimed he looked like a background artist, not a lead. All of this was being witnessed by Clint from the director's chair. He did not yell. He did not pace. He just waited. He wanted to see how far the actor would go before the reality of the call sheet set in. And for the next 40 minutes, the demands grew bolder. He wanted a different hat than a different prop. He wanted to see if Clint would cave on the small things. It was a power play. Clint finally stood up. He walked over to the actor and pointed to his mark. He did not acknowledge the wardrobe complaints. He did not acknowledge the late arrival. He simply said, "We have 4 pages to shoot before lunch. Are you ready?" The actor smirked. He looked around the set, hoping for an audience, but the crew was silent. No one was laughing or siding with him. He realized at that moment that he was the only person who cared about his drama. He walked to his mark and mumbled that he was ready. They shot the scene in 1 take. It was perfect, and Clint moved on. He did not offer a compliment or a critique. He just set up the next camera position for the next scene. The actor went to his trailer and didn't come out for an hour. He'd walked in expecting to rattle the room and had been completely ignored. So he regrouped, and what came next was actually smarter and more deliberate. He stopped going at Clint directly and started quietly dismantling everything around him instead, tripping extras mid-scene and whispering just loud enough to wreck an audio take, turning lunch into a 40-minute complaint session. He'd found the edges of the production where Clint couldn't immediately respond, and that's where he started applying pressure. The breakdown of command. By the end of the first week, the set had transformed into a cold war zone. Clint operated like a machine. He arrived at 6 in the morning and left only when the final shot was over. The actor arrived at 9, walked through the process with a sneer, and disappeared into his trailer whenever he could. They didn't speak unless the camera was rolling. The crew stopped trying to bridge the gap. They just kept their heads down. Why would a seasoned director allow such a blatant display of insubordination to continue for 3 full weeks? The truth was later disclosed in interviews. Clint was watching for a pattern. He wanted to see if the erratic behavior was a genuine struggle or a deliberate tactic. He noticed the actor only acted out when the camera was on a wide shot. When the lens was zoomed in for a close-up, the man became laser-focused. He delivered his lines with perfect timing. He hit his marks. He was playing a game. He was trying to drain the clock on the big scenes and save his best work for the moments where he was the only thing on screen. Clint realized the strategy on a Thursday. They were filming a difficult sequence near a riverbank. The actor complained about the heat for an hour. He stalled the lighting team and argued over the shot's logistics. Clint finally had enough and told the crew to take a break. According to witnesses, he walked up to the actor and simply said, "If you want to be the lead, you have to be the first one on set tomorrow." The actor stiffened. He hadn't expected a direct challenge. He tried to brush it off with a comment about his process, but Clint had already walked away. That was the shift. He treated the actor like an employee who wasn't performing, not a star who needed to be coddled. The next morning, the actor was on set at 8. He didn't apologize. He didn't smile. He just went to his mark. Clint didn't even look up from the monitor. He just shouted for the sound recordist to roll. They finished the entire sequence in 90 minutes. The efficiency was shocking. For a brief moment, it looked like the tension had broken. The crew allowed themselves to hope that the worst was over. They started talking about wrapping early. Then, the actor shifted tactics. He stopped being difficult to the director and started being difficult to the extras. He would trip them during scenes. He would whisper loud enough to ruin the audio take. He would complain about the lunch catering until the entire break was filled with his voice. He had moved his sabotage to the parts of the production where Clint couldn't easily intervene. He wanted to maintain his power. He needed the set to be chaotic because he didn't know how to work in a room that was calm. Clint felt the shift. He watched the actor trip a young supporting player during a walk and talk scene. Clint called for a cut. He walked across the gravel, his boots crunching in the silence. He didn't go to the director's chair. He went to the craft services table, grabbed a bottle of water, and handed it to the young actor who had been tripped. He didn't say a word to the lead actor. He just stood there, staring at him. It was a stare that could stop anyone dead in their tracks. The lead actor finally walked away. He headed for his trailer, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Clint just turned back to the camera. He instructed the grip to move the dolly track 2 feet to the left. He was showing them that the work was the only thing that deserved their attention. What was the final straw that caused Clint to stop treating the actor like a difficult colleague and start treating him like a problem to be solved? It happened during a night shoot. They were filming a pivotal scene in a barn. The actor decided he wanted to change the movie's ending. He started ad-libbing lines that completely contradicted the established plot. He was trying to force a character development that hadn't been written. Clint let him go on for 3 minutes. He watched the actor grow more confident with every new line, acting like he was the one actually directing the movie in real time. Clint finally called cut. He told the actor that if he didn't deliver the script exactly as written, he would be cut from the scene entirely. He didn't offer a compromise. He gave a direct command and provided the consequences. The actor was shocked. He had been getting away with this kind of behavior for a decade. He looked at the crew, expecting support. He found only silence. The atmosphere in the barn was thick. When the director was finished, the game was over. The actor finally dropped his head and nodded. They reset the scene. He delivered the lines perfectly. He didn't miss a beat. He was capable of excellence, but he had proven that he would only provide it when he was forced to. The shoot continued for another week. It was a professional, cold, and productive week. The actor stayed on his marks. He hit his cues. He was a perfect actor. Clint had managed to win the battle of wills, but he had lost the possibility of a future collaboration. His film was a success, but he was left with the realization that some people can never be steered. He had finished the job, but he had also marked a name off his list forever. But before the final shot was made, something more disturbing happened. The boiling point. On the final day of location shooting, they were miles from the nearest town. The crew was exhausted. They had spent 3 weeks dealing with the actor's constant interference. Clint was said to be in his chair, staring at the monitors with his hat pulled low when the actor marched over to him. He was holding a glass of water. He tossed it onto the dirt near Clint's feet and demanded a rewrite of the final monologue. He said the lines were too simple for a talent like his. Clint did not look up. The silence lasted for 10 seconds. A crew member described the moment as a mind-blowing situation. Everyone was too stunned to speak. Clint stood up. He did not raise his voice. He did not make a scene. He looked the actor in the eye and told him to get off the set. He used 3 words that were sharp enough to cut through the noise. The actor stood there, stunned. He tried to laugh it off, but his smile failed him. Why did a man known for his calm, collected nature choose to go nuclear in front of his entire crew? The client had a specific vision for the project. He understood that the story did not belong to any single star. He knew that the audience was there for the pacing and the narrative. The actor was sabotaging the heartbeat of the film. Every time he added a flourish or changed a line, he was diluting the impact of the scene. Clint was not fighting for his ego. He was fighting for the integrity of the work. He protected the film like it was his own child. The actor started to gather his things. He made sure everyone saw him do it. He threw his costume on the ground. He insulted the lighting quality on his way to his trailer. He wanted to make it look like he was the one walking away on his own terms. It was a pathetic display. Clint just signaled for the next setup. He started directing the stand-ins immediately. He did not wait for the actor to leave. He did not mention him again. Did the rest of the cast feel relieved, or were they worried about how the production could recover after such a public explosion? The relief was instant. You could see it in the way the crew moved. People started talking again. The tension that had been hanging over the set for 3 weeks dissolved. The lead actress walked over to Clint and offered him a bottle of water. They started discussing the next angle without a second of hesitation. They were finally working as a unit again. The film was moving forward. That was all that mattered. Clint adjusted the camera lens himself. He wanted the shot to be perfect. He did not care that they were behind schedule. He did not care about the drama. He only cared about the frame. They filmed the final monologue with a stand-in. It was clean. It was simple. It was exactly what he had asked for in the first place. The actor was left sitting in his trailer, waiting for a call that would never come. He was irrelevant to the process. He realized too late that he was replaceable. He had bet everything on the idea that the project could not function without him. He thought he was the draw. He thought the audience was there to see his specific brand of chaotic energy. Clint proved that the story was the only thing that mattered. He proved that no individual is bigger than the production. The actor had lost his seat at the table. He was now just an observer of his own failure. The sunset finished its work, and the set lights flickered on. They worked through the night to make up for lost time. They were efficient. They were fast. They moved with a purpose they hadn't felt in weeks. Clint was in his element. He was making movies. He was crafting a world that the audience would eventually see in theaters. He had eliminated the bottleneck. He had cleared the path. He was not just the director, he was the protector of the craft. The actor would later go on to tell stories about how he quit the set because of creative differences. He would rewrite his own history to make himself look like the victim of a controlling director. But the people who were there knew the truth. They knew that he had been kicked off the set for being impossible to work with. They knew that his career had hit a wall because he refused to respect the people around him. He had become a caricature of his own ego. Clint never corrected him. He never went to the press to defend himself. He never gave an interview about the incident. He let the final product speak for itself. He focused on the edit. He spent his days in the dark room, piecing together the narrative. He was looking for the rhythm. He was trimming the fat. He was making sure that every second served the story. He was a professional to the core. He had nothing to prove to anyone. He had finished the film. His silence was the final punctuation on the entire ordeal. He did not need to win a war of words. He had already won the war of results. The actor faded from the top-tier projects, his reputation catching up to him. Clint kept working, he kept directing, he kept building his legacy. He stayed true to his own internal clock. He moved forward, ignoring the debris left behind by those who couldn't keep pace. He walked away from the desert with a clean slate and a finished masterpiece. He taught everyone on that set a silent, brutal lesson. Excellence is not just about talent, it is about showing up, doing the work, and staying out of the way of the story. That is the only way to earn the chair. Everything else is just noise. The professional fallout.
Good luck, Josie.
The dailies arrived at the studio in Burbank a week later. The executives gathered in a dark screening room. They were ready for a disaster. They had heard the rumors of the blowout. They expected a jagged, incoherent mess. Instead, they watched a film that was tight, focused, and visually stunning. Clint had cut around the chaos. He had used the moments where the actor was present and covered the rest with clever camera work. The studio heads exchanged looks in the dark. They had a hit on their hands, but they had a problem on the payroll. How do you market a film when the lead actor is effectively persona non grata? The fallout hit the trade papers on a Friday. Headlines blared about creative differences. The actor's publicist pushed a narrative of an artist being stifled by a rigid director. It was a classic Hollywood spin. Clint remained silent. He was busy working on the sound mix for his next project. He refused to give in to the narrative. He knew that if he fought back, he would only be legitimizing the actor's petty complaints. He let the industry gossip run its course. He was playing the long game. Why did the studio decide to blacklist the actor instead of defending their star? They had seen the footage. They saw the moments where the actor had checked out. They saw the lack of connection in the scenes he had sabotaged. They realized that he was a problem that cost them money. If an actor creates more problems than he solves, he is finished. The studio quietly dropped him from future development deals. They didn't announce it and just stopped returning his calls. The actor found himself on the outside looking in. He tried to book roles, but the doors that had once been wide open were now locked. He turned to smaller, low-budget productions. He kept trying to exert his creative control. The directors there were less patient than Clint. They didn't have the budget to wait for his outbursts. They would fire him mid-shoot. His reputation began to destroy his career. He had burned the most important bridge in the business. Consider the difference in their career paths. Clint went from the desert shoot to a project that would earn him universal acclaim. He became a symbol of a dying breed, the director who could produce quality on time and under budget. He solidified his position at the top of the food chain. He didn't just survive the fallout, he thrived because of it. He had proved that his process worked, even under the worst conditions. Was this just a matter of professional reputation? Or was there a deeper issue with how the industry treated talent that refused to play the game? The actor believed he was a misunderstood genius. He told anyone who would listen that Hollywood was afraid of his vision. He started wearing his exile like a badge of honor. He would go to parties and tell embellished stories about his run-in with Eastwood. He tried to turn his failure into a myth of rebellion, but the myth didn't pay the bills. He slowly faded into the background. He became the guy who told stories at the bar about the movie that could have been his comeback. Clint, meanwhile, was working with the best talent in the world. He was attracting writers, cinematographers, and actors who wanted to work with someone who respected their time. He didn't just avoid difficult actors. He actively cultivated an environment where professionals wanted to be. He had created a culture of mutual respect. The fall of his co-star was just a footnote in his career. It was a lesson he had taught and forgotten before the first trailer even hit the theaters. There is a moment in an interview Clint gave years later. A journalist asked him about the most difficult actor he had ever worked with. Clint didn't name names. He didn't drag up the past. He just looked at the reporter and said that every production has its own rhythm. And sometimes, you just have to wait for the noise to stop. He didn't need to be right. He didn't need to win. He was already the director. He had already won the only way that mattered. The fallout taught the industry a lesson. Power in Hollywood is constantly changing, but the work is permanent. You can be the biggest star in the world, but if you don't show up, if you don't hit your mark, and if you don't respect the people working around you, you are replaceable. The camera doesn't care about your ego. It only cares about the performance. Clint Eastwood understood that. His co-star never did. And that is why one of them is remembered as a legend, while the other is remembered as a warning. The dust finally settled on the project. The film premiered to sold-out crowds. The reviews praised the taut direction and the crisp editing. Nobody missed the actor's missed cues. Nobody asked why he wasn't at the press junket. The audience got exactly what they paid for, a story told with precision. The actor watched the success from his living room, clutching a glass of something strong and wondering where it all went wrong. He never got another chance at the big time. He had his one, and he threw it away for a moment of self-importance. He was the architect of his own obsolescence. Clint had just been the guy holding the camera. The aftermath of the feud years.
He's wild.
That really flipped me out because having grown up in small towns, when somebody says you live at 20th and Plum.
Shave and a hot bath?
That'll be 90 cents.
Passed, but the story remained a staple of Hollywood lore. It lived in the break rooms and the casting offices. It was the cautionary tale whispered to young actors who arrived on set with too much ego. Every time someone dared to show up late or question the director, a producer would lean in and say, "You're no Eastwood co-star." It was a punchline, but it was also a warning. Clint never brought it up. He kept moving. He directed another dozen films. He won more Oscars. He became a fixture of American cinema. The actor, meanwhile, had become a ghost. Why did the industry collectively decide that this specific clash was the one that would define the actor's obituary? It was about more than just one bad production. It was a symptom of a changing tide. Hollywood was moving away from the era of the pampered, uncontrollable star. The studios were tightening their belts. They wanted professionals who could deliver a product without the circus. Clint represented that shift. He was the prototype for the modern director, efficient, prepared, and entirely business-focused. The actor, by contrast, was a relic of the 60s, a time when excess was tolerated as part of the creative process. Think about the reunion that never happened. A decade after the film, a producer tried to cast them in a cameo together. It was a vanity project. It would have made millions in publicity alone. The producer called Clint's office. He was told, "Not interested." The producer called the actor. He was told, "Tell Clint I'll do it if he admits he was wrong." The cameo died before it reached a script. They were two men who had reached the same conclusion about each other. They were better off in different hemispheres. Was the lack of a reconciliation the ultimate proof that the damage was too deep to ever fix? Clint found his peace in the work. He didn't need the actor's approval. He didn't need to be right. He just needed the next frame to be better than the last. He lived a remarkably consistent life. He woke up early. He read scripts. He looked for stories that moved him. He was a man who lived in the present tense. He didn't waste time on the debris of his past. He knew that the only way to stay relevant was to keep evolving. The actor's path was much harder. He spent his later years trying to explain his actions to anyone who would listen. He gave interviews that were filled with bitterness. He spoke of how he was pushed out of a business he helped build. He saw himself as the victim of a director who didn't understand his depth. He couldn't see that the world had moved on. He was standing on a train platform, waiting for a locomotive that had left the station years ago. There is a lesson here that applies to more than just the film industry. We all have moments where we have to work with people we don't respect. We all face the choice between engaging in the chaos or focusing on the result. Clint chose the result. He chose to protect the work. It is a philosophy that has kept him at the top of the mountain for half a century. He is still working today. He is still on a set, somewhere in California, calling for action. And the actor, he is a footnote. He is a name on an old call sheet. He is the guy who lost a staring contest with a man who never blinks. It is a reminder that the loudest person in the room is rarely the one who ends up with the final cut. That is how you beat the chaos. You don't fight it with more noise. You fight it with patience. You let the other person show the world exactly who they are, and you keep your focus on the story. Clint Eastwood did that. He kept his focus, he kept his temper, and he kept his place in the history books. The rest of it, the shouting and the cigars and the bruised egos, was just shadow. The film is the substance. It is the only thing that remains when the lights finally go down. The story of Clint Eastwood and his most difficult co-star is a masterclass in the value of professional restraint. And yes, everyone tried to get the name of this one actor. However, Eastwood refused to do that, choosing only to talk about the experience. While one man burned bridges in the pursuit of his own ego, the other stayed focused on the only thing that actually matters, the final cut. Clint didn't need to shout to win, he simply outworked the chaos. Do you think a director should ever compromise their vision to manage a difficult star? Or is the work always worth the friction? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this dive into Hollywood history, make sure to subscribe for more.